Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching.
No, I don't want to hear any more of this. Billy objected to his wife urging her husband not to cling to his son. Let him rest, he can still work, Kathy continued, trying to protect her son. How long can you rest? I understand that he served in the army, he studied at the Highway Technical School, but it's been more than 3 years since that moment, and Steve still hasn't brought a penny into the house. What's the big deal? I mean, you make good money, and you can easily provide for him. You want him to sit on our backs his whole life. He's 27 years old. He's about to start a family. How is he going to provide for his wife and children? Millie continued, who at that age had already become a father providing for a young family. Well, yes, you're right, but maybe you shouldn't be so quick to take it out on him. I know your companion. He'll take away all desire to work. He won't stop defending Kathy's son, believing that he was created for something more interesting, easy, and exciting. Nothing bad will happen to him. I've raised my son to be a wimp, and now I have to deal with it. He's going to work for John. I've made up my mind, and it's not up for discussion. Why don't I take him to my office? The woman suggested it, trying to keep her son away from hard work. What would he do there? To bring coffee and play a game of leopard's head on the computer. Stop arguing, it's settled. I've already called John, and we've agreed that he'll leave room for Steve. It's a useful experience, moreover. Maybe he'll like it, Lily suggested, since his son was studying at a highway technical school, so the passion for transportation must be present. I'm tired of arguing. You don't hear me at all, the agitated woman replied sadly, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. Stop crying. I'm not sending him to slavery, but to an old schoolmate. I'm sure that nothing bad will happen to our son, the man replied, seeing the tears in his wife's eyes. Lily put his arm around his wife's shoulders to comfort her a little and stroked Katie's head. You have no heart at all. I'm going to worry, she said with difficulty as she continued to cry. Calm down, everything will be fine. If he can't cope at all, we'll find a simpler job, but he must learn to earn money and appreciate it, the husband replied, insisting on his own. Promise you'll find something else if he can't work with John? Yes, I promise. By the way, it's almost 8 o'clock in the morning. Is Steve still asleep? Lily asked. It's so early. Let the baby rest, the wife replied. What baby? He'll be nursing his own children soon, and you keep wiping his drool. Mother, stop it, or we'll have a fight. Go, wake him up, and hurry up, said the man, and, opening the window, took out a cigarette to smoke, while his wife went to the bedroom of his son. Good morning, son. Are you asleep? Asked the mother, opening the door to Steve's bedroom. Hi, Mom. No, already awake, replied the young man, wiping his eyes. Your father and I are waiting for you in the kitchen. We need to talk, Katie replied and left to go to her father's room. Reluctantly getting out of bed, Steve made the bed and dressed, hurried after his mother. What are we having for breakfast today? The boy asked, once he was in the kitchen. Sit down, I've got a serious talk for you, Billy answered, putting out his cigarette and closing the window. What do you want to talk to me about? Steve asked in confusion. Dad thinks it's time for you to get a job, Mom replied. You know I'm looking, but I haven't found anything suitable yet, the son replied. Do not interfere in a man's conversation, interrupted the dialogue of wife and son, the head of the family. I'm sorry, Kathy replied guiltily and stood up from the table and rattled the pans to prepare breakfast. You've been looking for a job for 3 years. Don't you think it's time for a change? The father asked, looking into his son's eyes. Is it my fault that nothing suits me? You can't be late. You can't ask for time off. Is this a normal job? Replied Steve, who never stays longer than 2 weeks in any job. Don't you think you're the problem? Nobody's going to wipe your ass, and they're not going to run around like your mother did. Lily objected sharply. Why would you do that? The mother asked, intervening in the dialogue. "Are you cooking?" "Don't get distracted and get busy," replied the husband, looking sternly at his wife. Realizing that it was better not to say anything, the woman continued to cook the soup, listening to the dialogue of her husband and son. "I don't need to wipe anything up for me. I just want to be considered," Steve replied. "Do you deserve it? Have you ever done anything to be respected at work and to be considered by the team?" asked the father. "I should not suck up or be friends with those who do not interest me," replied the son, not realizing that by building relationships, he will not be able to work well in any team. "You have to learn to value the workplace. I called an old acquaintance of mine. He is opening a new service station and is hiring staff. John and I agreed that he'd save a place for you. So congratulations, you're going to work tomorrow." "What? I don't want to work at the service station. I have completely different plans, especially for tomorrow," Steve tried to object. "I'm not asking you what your plans are or what you want. You're a grown man and you have to support yourself. If John is not happy, he will not fire you. He will call me and I will look for methods of influence. Do you understand me?" asked the man, getting angry at his carefree and frivolous son. "Oh, and what will you do to me?" asked the son, throwing his leg over his foot as if he was the master of the house and not afraid of anything. "For starters, I'll take away your pocket money, and if you continue to be negligent, you'll go looking for another place to live." "Any more questions?" Billy asked menacingly, his tone suggesting that it would be better not to argue. "No questions," Steve grumbled unhappily, and refusing breakfast, went to his room, slamming the door loudly. "Why would you do that? He's just a baby," Kathy said to her husband, realizing that her son was upset. "What kid? The man is 27 years old. It's time for him to look for a wife, and he hasn't brought a rebel into the house. Don't even try to change my mind or defend him. I don't want to swear, but you're forcing me to raise my voice," the man boiled, hitting the table with his fist. All right, I'm sorry. Maybe you're right," the wife replied guiltily, agreeing with her husband. "That's fine. Come on, I've got to get to work," Billy said, demanding breakfast. Noticing that it was already 9 o'clock, the man hurriedly ate breakfast and, taking his work documents with him, left for the office. "Son, maybe you'll have breakfast after all," the mother asked, looking into her son's bedroom, right after her husband had left for work. "No, thank you, I did not earn," sharply replied Steve, staring at the monitor of the laptop. "Why would you do that?" "I did nothing wrong," the woman replied guiltily, taking her son's refusal to heart. "Sorry, I did not mean to offend you. It's just that my father does not hear and understand me at all. I don't mind working. I just want to find something interesting and worthwhile," Steve replied, calming his mother and hugging her a little. "I understand you, but you can see that I can't come between you. Yes, your father is strict, and maybe he was wrong to decide everything for you, but try to understand him. He wants what's best for you. He cares, and he's trying to do the best for you. Maybe you will really try to work in a service station. Maybe you will like it," asked the mother, trying to persuade her son to listen to his father. "Okay, for your sake I will try," replied the son, realizing that he did not want to see tears on his mother's face. The next morning, Steve, waking up before 7 a.m. for the first time, rushed to the shower to shave and clean up. Trying not to cross with his father, the guy had breakfast and, taking his diploma with him, went to meet with the owner of the service station. Steve didn't want to work there, especially since he knew John and how strict he was, both at work and in life. At the same time, he didn't want to upset his mother, so he decided that he would do anything to please his father, at least for the first few days, until he could think of something or find a better job. "Good morning, John. I'm here to see you. My father told me you had a vacancy," Steve said, greeting his father's old friend. "Hello, Steve. Yes, we spoke to Billy, and he said you need a job. I can't say no to him, so I'm willing to take you on as an auto mechanic," replied the man in the business suit and gold-rimmed glasses. That's great, but I don't know much about it. Didn't you go to highway school, or am I confused? John asked in surprise. No, that's right, answered Steve and gave his employer his diploma. Well, that's not bad. But what about your employment history? I don't know where it is, but I don't think there's any need for it. I didn't work a day. I just went where my dad wanted me to go. You know how he is. Yeah, I recognize Billy. Okay. For now, you'll be apprenticed to the two main mechanics. I'm sure they'll quickly teach you everything and explain how to work. John replied, realizing that Steve wasn't the best worker, but he had to keep his promise to his friend. Okay, agreed, Steve replied, realizing that he didn't have much choice. Come on, I'll introduce you to my colleagues, said the man, and having escorted the boy out of the office, went to the workshop, where two of his mentees were working on the first car, which had arrived half an hour ago. Billy, Austin, distract yourselves for a second, said John, noticing the subordinates digging under the red Mazda. Good morning, Chief, Billy replied, seeing the chief standing by the car. Hi. Sorry we didn't see you. We're draining the old oil because the girl drove for 2 years without servicing the car, complimented his colleague Austin, who also crawled out from under the car to greet the chief. It's no big deal, I get it. Meet Steve, and he will be working with you. He's a little inexperienced, so he'll be your apprentice. I'm sure you'll quickly teach him the job and make a good specialist out of him, John said, and entrusting Steve to his colleagues, returned to his office. Let's get acquainted. My name is Billy, and this is Austin, one of the workers answered, shaking Steve's hand. I hope we'll work well together, Steve replied and hurried into the office to change into his work clothes. Without delaying the training of their new colleague, Billy and Austin immediately introduced Steve to the work, telling him the main technical points and nuances of car maintenance. Theory without practice is dead in this business, so the men immediately put Steve behind the Mazda, step by step, telling the guy how to drain antifreeze and change the oil in the automatic transmission. Trying to obey his more experienced colleagues in everything, Steve coped with his task, but he got dirty and almost tore his pants, digging under the bottom of the car. The men realized that the colleague was practically zero, so at the end of the working day, they went up to the chief's office to talk to him. Hello again, John. Can I come in? Billy knocked on the door and saw the chief at his workplace. Yes, come in, answered the man, who used a few minutes to rest and took off his glasses, putting them aside. We wanted to talk to you about the new guy. Are you sure we want him? I don't want to question your choice, but maybe we should look for a more qualified employee, Austin asked, delicately questioning the chief. Men, I realize that Steve is not the most useful employee, but he is the son of an old comrade of mine. I promised him that I would help with Steve's employment and make a man out of him. I hope you'll be sympathetic and help me to shake him into a man capable of earning and providing for himself, John replied, explaining why he'd hired Steve rather than a more experienced and better quality man. I see, so our only chance is to teach him the job, Billy replied, accepting the new conditions. Yes, I'm sorry, but it's the only possibility, admitted the boss. Okay, we heard you, answered Austin, and realizing that there was no point in further conversation, left the chief's office together with his colleague. Well, we'll get used to what Billy had given his colleague and went to take a shower to tidy up before he left for home. Steve's next morning was not much different from the previous one, as he woke up earlier than usual to avoid being late for work. Hurrying to the machine shop, the guy hoped that he would not have much work to do, as he gets tired quickly and wants to rest more and more often than his colleagues, who use only half an hour during the lunch break. Steve's expectations were dashed. For once in the workshop, he saw several cabs arriving at once for service. All day long, his partners had been rushing their colleague, who was not able to change the air filter or check the condition of the pump. Unable to stand it, Billy got very angry at his helpless colleague and said everything he thought about him, forgetting for a moment about the chief's request. Unable to tolerate such treatment, Steve dropped everything and went to John's office. "Hi, can I see you?" "Hi, come on in. Are you on business or what?" the man asked, inviting Steve into his office. "I can't work under these conditions." "Mate, yeah, I knew he'd be difficult. It's Margarita's upbringing. She's used to spoiling and protecting him, and now I have to deal with it. I'm sorry, but I have no one else to rely on. Be as strict with him as possible, and I'll talk to my son again tonight and explain how to behave," Billy replied, realizing that he was guilty before his friend. "Good. I hope you're not mad at me for calling you." "No, it's okay. I understand, and I probably would have done the same thing." "Well, I'm sorry for bothering you. I hope it won't happen again," John replied, summarizing the conversation with his old friend. Another day in the workshop came to an end, and Steve, having said goodbye to his colleagues, decided to stay a little longer, meeting with his army comrade. Having a few drinks and sitting at the bar, the men chatted, learning about how a few years of their lives had gone after the demo. During this time, the battle buddy had gotten married and had 2 sons, one of whom had already started running, pleasing his father. Steve also wanted to brag about something, but there was nothing to tell except the graduation from the technical school. Noticing that it was already quite late, he said goodbye to his friend and went home, realizing that early in the morning he had to go to work again. "Where have you been?" "It's almost midnight," Billy asked from the doorstep, who was waiting for his son to talk to him once again about work and the future. "I'm an adult, and I can do what I want," Steve answered sharply, with alcohol in his blood, which gave him courage and confidence. "Let's go to the kitchen. We have something to talk about," answered his father, who did not want their loud conversation to wake up his mother, who was tired after a hard day's work. "What did you want to talk to me about?" Steve asked, following his father. "Are you going to embarrass me for a long time?" Billy asked, closing the door to the kitchen. "What are you talking about? I'm working like you wanted me to. What more do you want? John called me today and told me how you're working there. When it comes to drinking, you're an adult. And when it comes to work, you can't lift a finger. If John ever complains to me about you again, I'll throw you out on the street with a suitcase and support you however you want. Do you understand me?" His father shouted, barely containing his emotions. "I understand," Steve answered, not wanting to continue the conversation, and went to his bedroom. Waking up in the morning, Steve takes his time at work and gets ready without fear of being late for the workshop. After taking a shower and getting ready, the guy went into the kitchen to have breakfast. The mother hastily prepared food, but noticed that the son eats reluctantly, as if he did not like something. Beginning to worry, the woman asked if Steve was all right, and he told about the night conversation with his father. The guy openly complained about the head of the family, knowing that his mother would stand up for him. Hearing that his father was also going to work, Steve kissed his mother and, trying not to cross paths with his father, hurried off to work. "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" Kathy asked when she was alone with her husband. "What do you mean?" her husband asked with incomprehension. "Steve told me that you yelled at him last night. Did he explain why I raised my voice? Or do you think I did it unjustifiably? I don't think you should be so picky. The boy has just started working. Give him time to get used to it," the mother replied, continuing to defend her adult son. "Who's stopping you?" "I just told him not to embarrass me and stop running to John and complaining to him like a school teacher. He's not gonna be coddled, and I'm not gonna let you do it anymore. Raised a wimp, and now I have to deal with it," replied the husband, and, not wanting to quarrel with his wife, hurriedly went to work. Realizing that there was no point in trying to stage a riot, Steve accepted his fate and, trying to listen to his colleagues, began to do his work. Remaining an assistant, The guy learns to do simple work and elementary processes that his colleagues do not want to spend time on, dealing with more labor-intensive tasks. So imperceptibly, for Steve passes several months. All this time, he practically did not cross paths with his boss and did not communicate with his father, believing that they put him in the framework, when there is no choice and no opportunity to decide anything on his own. At the same time, Steve is getting used to his job because Billy and Austin don't trust him with anything complicated or unsafe, and his salary is exactly the same as that of the craftsmen who work from morning till late at night. Another working day is coming to an end, and Steve, realizing that all the easy tasks are over, goes home a little earlier than his colleagues. Coming down from the office to the workshop, John noticed the absence of one of his mentees and was greatly surprised that the boy had left without informing him. Austin explained the reason for Steve's departure, unable to take responsibility and do anything serious. Having considered that 3 months had passed and the boy was ready for new tasks, John asked his mentees to stop babysitting Pavlov and entrust him with independent work. The next morning for Steve was not much different from the previous months, but there was a surprise waiting for him at work. Another car arrived for service and his co-workers put Steve in charge of it, refusing to help him. They told about yesterday's dialogue with the boss and also believed that it's time for the guy to take the job, being responsible for the result. Steve was not happy about this, as he was used to counting on men to do all the dirty and hard work. Realizing that he couldn't get out of it, and talking to John wouldn't lead to anything good, Steve started checking, diagnosing, and repairing the car. After spending a few days with him, the mechanic replaced the fuel pump, radiator, and a number of other parts, which, in his opinion, were out of order. Having finished all the work, Steve called the client, informing him that the car could be picked up. "Hello, I was told that the car is ready. Can I see the result?" asked a solid and moderately well-fed man in an expensive Italian suit and shoes sparkling with cleanliness. "Good afternoon." "Yes, of course," answered Steve, hurrying to the customer. Trying to please the customer in everything, the auto mechanic showed himself as an extremely attentive worker. Everything seemed to be fine and almost perfect. But when the customer tried to start the car, there was a problem. Steve tried to solve it quickly, but he did not succeed. Moreover, smoke came from under the hood of the car, scaring and angering the customer. "What the hell is this? Not only that the car does not start, so you have finally ruined it? Call the boss. Now we will deal with and find out who of you want to buy me a new car," menacingly declared the man, starting to shout at the whole workshop. "Now, one moment," guiltily answered Steve, who did not know what to do. Running to the office of the boss, he called John to the first floor, as only he can solve the situation, avoiding a grand conflict. "Good afternoon," Richard said, the owner of the service station, recognizing in the businessman an influential businessman known throughout the city. "Hello. What is it with your masters, such that my car after the repair only got worse? It used to stall, and now it won't start at all. Not to mention the fact that there is smoke from under the hood. Is this normal?" The businessman continued to be indignant. "I'm sure we can solve this little misunderstanding in the shortest possible time," John replied, trying to calm the man who could not only ruin the reputation of the service station, but also find levers to close the service once and for all. "And I'll pay twice for the repairs?" Richard asked. "No, our foreman will pay for all the damaged parts," the owner replied, pointing at Steve. The guy tried to challenge the chief's decision, but by the expression of his eyes, he realized that it was not worth it, because he was really guilty of what had happened. "Great, that suits me fine," replied the satisfied businessman, and accepting John's invitation, went with the man to his office to drink coffee and discuss the speed of the second repair. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to find and fix the mistake on his own, Steve turned to his colleagues. Billy and Austin did not want to do extraneous work, as they had enough to do, but realized that the guy was sincerely asking for their help. Having made diagnostics, the colleagues found another problem, which Steve did not notice because of his inexperience and inattention. Despite the high cost of the car, the guy had broken a relatively inexpensive part, losing only part of his salary. Within 24 hours, the partners not only replaced all the worn-out parts, but also completely resuscitated the businessman's SUV, covering the inexperienced colleague. Trying to rehabilitate himself in front of his colleagues, who saved his wallet and reputation in the eyes of his boss, Steve invited Billy and Austin to a bar to have a drink, relax, and socialize in an informal setting. It turned out that they were very pleasant and interesting men who lived hunting, fishing, and other hobbies that took up all their free time. During the conversation, Steve admitted that he had lived under his mother's supervision for too long, so now he was taking his first adult steps. Apologizing to his colleagues, Steve promised to work on himself so that he wouldn't set them up again and jeopardize the service. Keeping his word, Steve began to work better, consulting his coworkers less and less on how to repair this or that car. So imperceptibly, a few more months passed. During this period, Steve became independent and quite a good specialist, pleasing not only his colleagues, but also John. At the same time, his communication with his coworkers became much better. Gradually, they became comrades, and soon they became friends, as they spent time in each other's company from early morning until late evening. As he got to know Billy and Austin more and more, Steve wanted to spend the weekend with them, and when he heard about the fishing trip, he agreed to keep them company. Waking up earlier than usual on Saturday, Steve decided to get ready for an overnight fishing trip and buy everything he needed for it. After having breakfast, he hurried to a specialized store to buy a rod, bait, and other small things, without which there is nothing to do on a fishing trip. Upon returning home, Steve told his mother about his plans and pleased the woman, because the son has not only become independent, but also gained good friends who can help in a difficult moment. With his father, the relationship also improved, because Billy no longer considered his son soft or a wimp, because the old comrade repeatedly called him, telling him about Steve's intermediate successes. "Hi, Uri. We're already in your driveway," said Austin, having reached Steve. "Hi. Yeah, just a couple more minutes, and I'm on my way out," Steve replied, and after throwing another sweater in his bag with everything he needed, he hurried downstairs. "So, are you ready for fishing?" Billy asked, meeting his coworker. "Of course I'm ready, but this is the first fishing trip of my life, so don't judge me harshly," answered Steve, who was happy to spend time with his friends and smiled like a child who had received a New Year's present he had long dreamed of. Leaving the city, the men found a rented house near the lake. Having thrown all the things in the house, they decided to spend time outdoors to build a fire and cook something to eat on an open fire. While Steve and Billy were busy making a fire and preparing for dinner, Austin went to the shore and returned a half-hour later, having caught a few small fish. After preparing the soup, the men roasted the meat they had bought at the supermarket on their way to the vacation. Having postponed the main part of the fishing for the morning, they decided to rest and have a little drink in the bathhouse. "So you're still living with your parents?" Austin asked, pouring the white wine. "Yeah, for now. It was my first serious job, so I didn't have any money for rent, and I don't see any point in looking for a separate apartment because I don't have anyone," Steve answered. "With your size, it's not surprising. You've been in the army, and you look like you've been lying on the couch all your life," Billy said. "The army is in the distant past, and after the demo, I didn't want to do anything with myself," Steve answered, drinking another shot. "Well, you should. In order to get some beautiful girl to pay attention to you, you have to pump yourself up," said the tipsy Austin. "That's right, Austin's got a point. It's time for you to find someone else, or you'll live with your parents until you retire," supported his friend Billy. "Maybe you're right, But where can I find girls when I'm always at home or at work? A couple of weeks ago, we opened a nude fitness center, Scala. Have you heard of it? Austin asked Steve. No, this is the first time I've heard of it. I was there a couple days ago, and not only can you get fit, but you can meet girls there, dozens of them. You want slim, you want tall. There's something for every taste, Austin continued. I don't know. It must be very expensive, Steve replied. Don't worry. The prices there are quite democratic. And it's worth it, replied Austin and started laughing, realizing that this is the most budget-friendly way to find a beautiful girl to get to know better. Okay, we'll go there sometime, Steve agreed, realizing that he couldn't refuse his friend's offer. After some more drinking and resting in the bathhouse, the friends went to bed to go fishing in the morning. Having slept a little through the dawn, the men ran to the lake and, without taking their eyes off the floats, spent several hours on the shore, catching a bunch of fish. On returning home, Steve was also not empty-handed and pleased his mother, who adored fish. The new work week went as expected, but his colleagues reminded him that they had a special event waiting for them this weekend. Waiting until Saturday, Billy and Austin called Steve to get ready, since they were waiting for him downstairs. Arriving at the huge building lit up like a Christmas tree, Steve began to doubt himself and the need to attend the fitness center, but there was no stopping his friends. Once inside, he was discouraged to see that there were even more girls than men. Good afternoon. Do you want to work out with us? Asked a pumped-up man in a sports uniform who approached the three friends who stopped on the threshold of the fitness center. Hello. Yes, we can try it, Austin replied. Great. My name is Max, and I'll be your trainer. The first session will determine your physical fitness and develop an individualized exercise plan for each of you. I understand you want to come with the three of us. That's right, agreed Billy. Good, in that case, I'll ask you to fill out some small forms, and I'll wait for you in the hall on the right, the trainer answered and left in that direction. The men spent a few minutes to leave their data and pay for the first session, and then they followed Max. The first training session was quite difficult and grueling, as the coach wanted to assess the men's physical fitness, determining their capabilities and potential. At the end of the hour-long session, the friends thanked the trainer and, having agreed on the next session, went to the cafe inside the fitness center to drink water and take a breath. What are you staring at? Austin asked, noticing that Steve was looking somewhere and not hearing his friends. He was staring at that pretty girl in the green suit, Billy said, noticing where his friend was looking. No, I was just thinking, answered Steve, who realized that he had been staring too long at the charming girl from the hall nearby. I'm sorry, but she's not your type, Austin said, seeing a stunning girl with a gorgeous figure and a luscious body. He'd need 10 years of training before he'd even have a chance to meet her, Billy agreed, looking at the gorgeous blonde with the six-pack instead of a tummy. Come on, I was just thinking, Steve replied, trying to stop his friends from discussing it. Yeah, that's what we figured. Just don't drool too much. You can find a girl here and you will succeed, but you shouldn't look at the prettiest girl in the fitness center, Billy answered, trying to support his friend. Trying to stop this ridiculous conversation, Steve left for the shower to freshen up a bit and relax after a grueling workout. After stopping at a cafe for dinner, the men said their goodbyes and went home. That night, Steve slept unusually well and pleasantly because he had a dream with a charming girl in a green tracksuit. Trying to push away his thoughts and fantasies, Steve tried to concentrate on his work, but it didn't help because the girl didn't leave his mind. Waiting for another workout, Steve decided to use the moment while his friends were busy exercising and talk to the coach. Excuse me, Max, but can I ask you a question not related to our training? Steve asked, deciding to ask about the girl from the neighboring gym. Yes, of course. What did you want to know? You see that girl over there in the green tracksuit? How long has she been coming to see you? Maybe you know something about her, asked the mechanic, hoping that the coach knows something about her. "This girl has been with us since the first day. Her name is Maddie," answered Max. "You know everyone that well?" Steve was surprised. "No, she just doesn't train. She works as a coach like me. In that gym, we have athletics, and you won't find a professional better than Maddie in our city." "So your colleagues?" "Then everything is clear," answered Steve, who felt a little embarrassed by the situation. Deciding not to continue the dialogue, he returned to the training, trying to concentrate on physical exercises with dumbbells and weights. While continuing to work and attend workouts, Steve repeatedly pays attention to the blonde girl from the neighboring gym. She constantly dreams about him and gives him no peace, but Steve realizes that he has no chance because she is too good. For weeks on end, Maddie doesn't get out of his head, and it becomes all too apparent. Friends realize that Steve has fallen in love for the first time and persuade him to meet a girl, because it is not so terrible, and there are always chances. He refuses his friend's idea to the last, but then Austin and Billy say that they will risk getting to know her instead of him. Jealous of his colleagues, Steve decides to try to communicate with the girl. Having finished the class a little earlier than his friends, the guy headed to the neighboring hall to watch the pretty girls work out. "Hello, are you coming to our practice or what?" Maddie asked, noticing a strange guy standing near the front door to their gym. "Hello. No, I'm just looking," replied Steve, who didn't know what to say to this charming and blindingly beautiful blonde. "I'm sorry, but that's not our policy. You can join the workout or, if you don't mind, leave this room," Maddie replied, admonishing the stranger. "All right, I'll leave, but only on one condition," the boy replied, deciding that this was his first and last chance. "What's that?" "You'll agree to have dinner with me at a restaurant," Steve replied, gathering all his will and courage into a fist. "Are you kidding me? You're holding up practice," replied Maddie, a little shocked by the stranger's insolence. "No, I'm not messing with you. This is the only condition under which I will leave." "Okay, I agree," the girl replied, causing Steve to smile sincerely. Without wasting precious time, Maddie went back to her workout, and Steve left the gym, telling his friends that he had asked the girl out and she had agreed. After finishing his workout and taking a shower, Steve went to the nearest flower store to buy a beautiful bouquet and try to make a good impression on the girl who had won his heart. Back at the fitness center, Steve waited until the end of the workday and, noticing Maddie, hurried over to her. "I've been expecting you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Steve." "My name is Maddie, but I can't say that I'm glad to meet you," the girl replied with a chill in her voice. "I understand. I apologize for my impudence, but I really wanted to get to know you better, and I'm glad you accepted my invitation to dinner." "Steve, I'm sorry, but I only agreed so as not to disrupt the training," Maddie replied, and without taking the flowers, stopped the car and drove home. Steve watched the cab drive away for a few moments, realizing that the girl had deceived him. Determined to stand his ground until the end, a few days later, Steve again visited the neighboring gym, disrupting the training session. Realizing that history would repeat itself, Maddie decided it would be easier to agree to a date once to stop the outrage. Getting a second consent, Steve was still just as positive, putting aside fear and doubt. Meeting the girl again after work, he realized that this time she was serious, too, so he invited Maddie to a beautiful and not cheap restaurant near the fitness center. "Thanks for agreeing to meet me," Steve said to Maddie, glad that at least the second time she did not refuse a date. "You're welcome, but don't expect more than that. I don't want anything to affect my work and ask you not to disrupt my training anymore," the girl replied. "Yeah, of course. I'm sorry for my impudence. I just liked you very much," the guy confessed, unable to take his eyes off the charming blonde with beautiful blue eyes. "Thank you, I'm very pleased," the girl replied, slightly embarrassed. "I'm very happy about it. I realize that from the outside it might seem like I'm crazy, but to a certain extent it's true. I've been watching you for days, and you seem to me a very interesting girl, and I hope I'm not mistaken in my conclusions." "I don't know what to say," Maddie replied, feeling a little embarrassed. "You don't have to answer anything. I understand perfectly well, and I'm just grateful for this chance," replied Steve, trying to be a real gentleman. After ordering, the couple ate dinner, continuing to socialize and get to know each other. Noticing that it was getting too late, Maddie asked him to walk her as public transportation was out and she was a little scared to go home alone. Steve gladly agreed because he considered it an additional chance to talk and spend at least a few more minutes with the girl. Once in the driveway, Maddie said goodbye to Steve and letting him kiss her on the cheek, ran home. Joyful Steve couldn't take a step for a few more minutes, realizing that the date had gone better than he could have expected. A couple of days later, in the middle of the workday, a yellow Matisse parked near the car service center with Maddie at the wheel. After shutting the car off, she headed inside the building and meeting one of the workers, decided to talk to him, telling him about the problems with the car. "Good afternoon. Could you help me with my car?" Maddie asked Austin. "Hello, what's your problem?" he asked, recognizing the girl from the fitness center. "I don't know. The car won't start the first time and stalls at every stoplight. I don't know much about it, so I decided to go to the nearest service I saw on my way." "Okay, let's take a look," Austin replied, and went outside to look under the hood of the car. He fiddled with the car for a few minutes before sighing heavily, wiping his hands clean of dust and machine oil. "What is it? Is it something serious?" Maddie asked fearfully. "Yeah, I'm afraid I can't handle it on my own." "Get the car into the box, and I'll call our best mechanic," Austin said, and hurried inside the shop. After listening to the foreman, Maddie had a hard time starting the car and drove it into a separate box, waiting for the foreman to return. A few minutes later, she saw Austin with Steve walking behind him. "This is our best technician. I'm sure he can help you," Austin replied, deciding to bring his colleague and the girl he liked a lot closer together. "Hi, so you work here?" Maddie asked Steve. "Hi, yeah. I take it you're having some car trouble?" Steve asked. "Yes, the second foreman said it was something serious and needed a better worker. I take it that meant you?" Maddie asked. "Well, I guess so," Steve said, a little embarrassed. "So can you help me?" "Let's see what the problem is," answered the mechanic, and looking under the hood of the car, began to check the condition of the main units and assemblies. "What is it? Is it serious?" Maddie asked, looking under the hood of the yellow Matisse. "How long have you had it serviced? Do you have any receipts or certificates of work done?" Steve asked. "No, I have nothing. This car was given to me by my mom. She bought herself a new car and gave this one to me so I could go to work," Maddie answered. "Got it. Basically, everything is clear to me here, but you'll have to leave the car until morning. I think that tomorrow morning everything will be ready and there will be no problems with it in the near future." "Well, how much will it cost?" the girl asked. "It's all free for you," Steve replied. "No, it doesn't work that way. I realize it's probably not cheap." "Stop it, I won't charge you. You're late for work. So I don't dare to keep you late, and we won't discuss the financial issue anymore. Okay?" "Okay, thank you. You'll thank me tomorrow," Steve replied, and taking his tools, began to tinker with the car. Realizing that she was superfluous here, Maddie went to work. As it turned out, there was no breakdown, just antifreeze and a timing belt, since the car had been poorly maintained for what seemed like a long time. Steve did it in a couple hours, but decided not to tell the girl about it, raising the importance of his work. The next morning, Maddie visits the auto shop again and, making Steve, checks his work. The car starts with ease and doesn't stall, idling quietly. "Thank you. You've really helped me out. Maybe I can pay for the repairs after all?" Maddie asked, feeling a little awkward. "No, I don't need anything. I'm glad I could help you, Steve replied, refusing the money. Okay, well then can I thank you in some other way? How about having coffee after work? The girl asked, suggesting a meeting. Yeah, why not? I'll meet you at the fitness center around 8. Good, I have just at that time ends the last training, answered Maddie, and thanking Steve once again, went to work in an old Matisse. How'd it go? Did everything work out? Austin asked Steve as soon as the girl left. Yeah, it worked out great. Thanks for turning down the repair and handing the car over to me, Steve replied, thanking his colleague for his ingenuity. You owe me a bottle, replied the friend, and, patting the guy on the shoulder, continued working on the next car. Having finished work a little earlier than usual, Steve hurried home to freshen up and change clothes. Noticing that it was already the beginning of 8, he hurried to the fitness center to be on time. Meeting up, the couple headed to a nearby cafe for coffee and some more socializing. This time, Maddie was more cheerful. It was noticeable that she herself did not mind socializing, as she wanted to know a little more about the man who had reanimated her car. Counting on another meeting, Steve asked for her cell phone number, realizing that the girl might refuse. To his surprise, Maddie readily agreed, as she is excited about the new meeting and is ready for it any day. Walking back to the fitness center, the couple walked to Big in the Park and came to the parking lot so Maddie could drive home. The next night, Steve decides to call the girl to set up another appointment. Hey, it's Steve. I hope I'm not interrupting you. Hi. No, I'm fine. How are you? Fine, I finished work and decided to call to ask if you want to meet in a couple hours. Steve asked, hoping that the girl would agree. In principle, it is possible. Will you wait for me after the training or meet me somewhere in a cafe? I'll make you after work. Okay, then I'll meet you at 8, Maddie replied, summarizing the conversation. Meeting again after work, the couple decided to go to the movie theater for one of the last shows. Having bought tickets for the last row, Maddie and Steve hardly saw the movie, as it was much more interesting to make out while enjoying each other's company. A few dates later, Steve realized that the girl had the same strong interest in him as he had in her, so he did not waste time and offered Maddie a serious relationship. As expected, the girl agreed, because she enjoyed spending time together with Steve and generally liked the guy, despite his modest appearance and financial situation. Rejoicing at the new stage in his life, Steve comes to work the next morning with a triumphant look, as if he won the lottery yesterday. Friends notice the elevated mood of his colleague, but because of the large amount of work, do not ask about what has happened, waiting for a lunch break. After finishing repairing another car, Austin and Billy headed into the back room to make coffee and grab some snacks. A few minutes later, Steve joined them, deciding to take a break before continuing with the maintenance on the car they had received that morning. What are you so happy about? Did you find money on the street, or did you dig up some treasure? Austin asked, trying to find out the reason for Steve's smile that hadn't disappeared from his face since this morning. Remember that gorgeous blonde from the fitness center, repairing her old Matisse? Steve asked. Of course we do. It's impossible to forget her, Billy pointed out. She's been my girlfriend since yesterday, Steve said, bragging to his friends. Are you serious, or are you kidding? Austin asked, not believing his own ears. No, I'm quite serious. She and I have been on several dates, and last night I proposed to her, Steve replied. Maybe you dreamed it, Billy asked, deciding to play a little joke on his colleague. You don't believe me? I can bring her over to get to know her better, Steve replied, a little perturbed by his friend's distrust. We believe you, and congratulations, because you managed to get one of the most beautiful girls. The main thing is not to miss your luck. There will be no second chance, answered Austin, supporting his friend. By the way, since you're not lonely now, why don't we go to the country house in pairs this weekend? The ladies would get acquainted, socialize, and we wouldn't be so bored, Billy suggested. Why not? I just need to discuss the matter with Maddie and if she doesn't mind, we can go to the same cabin as last time, agreed Steve, hoping that his girlfriend would also agree to spend the weekend in the fresh air. In the evening, he waits for Maddie from work and, deciding to take a walk in the park, tries to ask about the weekend, fearing to get a rejection. The girl notices that the guy is worried and frankly nervous, as if he wants to talk about something, but does not know where to start. Deciding to push him into a dialogue, Maddie decides to be the first to ask about what's troubling Steve. Is something wrong? You're a little jumpy today, the girl said. No, nothing's wrong. Just some friends suggested a weekend trip out of town, and I don't know how to tell you about it. What's the big deal? It's a great idea because you need to spend time with them as well as me. No, you don't understand. They want us to go to the countryside as a couple, Steve replied, explaining why he was so nervous. And you were nervous about that? I don't mind, because they are your friends and sooner or later I'd have to meet them, the girl answered calmly. Do you really think so? Surprised asked the guy, assuming that he would have to persuade Maddie for a long time. Of course, how could it be otherwise? I will gladly keep you company, and I'm sure we will have a good time. Hearing these words, Steve hugged and kissed the girl, because she is not only insanely beautiful, but also wise. Having seen Maddie home, Steve called Billy and Austin back, informing them that everything was in order and the cabin could be booked. Meanwhile, the girl went up to her house and, realizing that she wouldn't be home that weekend, decided to talk to her parents, giving them a heads up. I need to talk to you about something, said the girl when she saw her father and mother in the kitchen. What do you want to talk about? The father asked. I want to go to the country this weekend to relax a little. That's a good idea. We want to get away too, the mother said. No, I want to go with my boyfriend, replied Maddie. What? You have a boyfriend? Dad was surprised. Yes, I just didn't want to talk about it right away, since we just started dating, replied the girl. Who is he? What does he do? Is he from a good family? Mom asked, trying to find out more about her daughter's new boyfriend. He works as a mechanic in a car repair shop. I can't say anything else, as I don't know his parents. A mechanic? Shouldn't you have found someone better? The father asked indignantly. What's wrong with this profession? I don't care about material status, and it's more important that Steve is a good person, replied the daughter. All right, so be it. When will you introduce us to him? The mother asked. I'll do it a little later. For now, we want to go and relax with his friends. Okay, but don't take too long. We need to know who you're hanging out with. Look, me, if he offends you, nothing good awaits him, said the father, worried about his daughter. Don't worry, no one is going to hurt me, Maddie replied, reassuring her father. After discussing the upcoming weekend with her parents, the girl went to her bedroom to get some rest before the next working day. Meanwhile, Steve and his friends rented a cabin and went to the store to get groceries before heading out of town. Closer to the weekend, they gather as one big group. Billy took his spouse, Austin took a girlfriend he had gotten relatively recently, and Steve took Maddie with him. Once they arrived at the cabin, they settled in, and after making dinner, they decided to socialize a bit and get to know each other better. I think you remember my co-workers from work. This is Austin and this is Billy, said Steve, introducing his friends to Maddie. Nice to meet you. My name is Maddie, replied the girl. We know, we saw you at the fitness center. Austin is me, and this is my lovely Noria, said one of the men, introducing his girlfriend. As you can guess, my name is Billy, and this is my wife Hannah, the other one added. Pleased to meet you all, replied Billy's wife, having gotten to know both his colleagues and their girlfriends. As they continued chatting, they got to know each other better, and while the men went fishing, the women got busy preparing dinner. After making everything they needed, they went out for a walk, and when they saw it was getting dark, they called the men into the house. Steve and his friends were in no hurry to return, as they got into fishing, and knelt at the bathhouse to relax a bit. Forgetting about the girls, they took a bottle of white water and sat in the steam room, enjoying the peace and quiet. Meanwhile, the girls were left alone in the house and, taking out a bottle of wine, also decided to socialize, discussing men. In the morning, everyone goes back to town and Steve, having returned home closer to lunchtime, meets his parents, who knew nothing about his plans for the weekend. "Where have you been and why didn't you spend the night at home?" the mother asks when she hears that her son has come home. "Hi, Mom. With friends went out of town. We're fishing," Steve replied. "And we do not need to warn us about it. Mom was worried. Couldn't get through," Billy answered. "I'm sorry. My phone was dead, and I didn't see that you called. There's nothing to worry about. I was with my friends and my girlfriend." "Girlfriend? You didn't mention you were seeing someone," my mother was surprised. "Well, you wanted me to grow up and be my own man. First a job, now a girlfriend. Everything is exactly as you dreamed," answered Steve. "Well done, son. Finally you start to please us with your mother," replied the father, happy that his son took the mind and started to do the right thing. "Who is she? When will you introduce us to her?" Mom asked. "Her name is Maddie. She works as a fitness trainer at the new sports center. I promise I'll introduce you soon," Steve replied, reassuring his parents. As he continued to see Maddie and work at the auto shop, Steve quickly forgot about his mother's promise, concentrating fully on local problems and tasks. Diligently repairing cars, Steve has caused astonishment to John, who recently considered him an unpromising slacker, unable to take responsibility for his actions. In his spare time, Steve does not forget about the girl, spoiling Maddie not only with his attention, but also with modest gifts, confirming his serious attitude to her. 3 months have passed since the moment when Steve promised his parents to introduce them to Maddie, and his mother, having started to worry, reminded him about it again. Realizing that further postponement is impossible, Steve decided to talk to the girl, discussing her future acquaintance with his parents. Having met Maddie, Steve invited her to the park to tell her about his mother and father's wish, but he couldn't find the words, not knowing where to start. "You're kind of pensive and quiet today. Knowing you, I suppose you want to talk about something?" Maddie asked, who had gotten to know Steve well enough over the months to notice any change in his behavior. "Yes, I can't keep anything from you. I wanted to talk to you about my parents." "I'm guessing they want to meet me?" the girl asked. "Yeah, that's right. I don't know how you'll react to it, but I really wanted you to understand," Steve replied. "In principle, I don't mind, especially since my parents have wanted to meet you for a long time." "Great, then I'll arrange for them to wait for you to visit," Steve asked, clarifying whether the girl is really ready to meet and meet soon. "Yes, okay. I think we can meet your parents this weekend. I hope they are not too picky, because I'm starting to be a little afraid," admitted Maddie, realizing that this is a serious and responsible step. "No, they are simple and good-natured people, especially my mom," answered Steve, reassuring his girlfriend. "Well then, okay, I agree." Hearing this, Steve was very happy and, hugging Maddie tightly, kissed her. When he got home, he told his parents that they might be meeting soon and nothing could be planned for the weekend. Hearing agreement on their part, Steve called the girl back and clarified that her parents would be expecting her on Saturday, closer to 6 in the evening. To make it convenient, he will pick her up, and on the way they will buy some cake for tea. Maddie agrees, and soon the weekend arrives. Meeting with the guy, she is very nervous and afraid. At some point, the girl even wanted to run away, refusing the acquaintance, but she realized that it would be ugly, and she has no way back. "Hello, my name is Maddie. Glad to meet you," said Maddie, seeing Steve's mother on the threshold of the apartment. "Hello, Maddie. My name is Kathy, and this is my husband, Billy," the woman replied, pointing to a man standing a couple of meters away from her. "Good afternoon. I'm glad Steve finally had the courage to bring you into our home. Come in, make yourself at home," replied her father, who smiled at the charming girl. Father is happy, don't worry, Steve whispered in Maddie's ear, noticing that her father liked her a lot. Come in, we'll have tea, answered the mother, and leaving the children to their father, ran to the kitchen to finish preparing for dinner. First wash your hands, and then to the kitchen, added the father and, embarrassed, left after his wife. You see, my parents are not as scary as you might think, Steve said humorously, trying to lighten the mood a little. Yeah, I noticed, Maddie replied, calming down a bit. After washing their hands and looking in the mirror, Maddie and Steve also went into the kitchen to talk to their parents and eat dinner with their family. You're a trainer at the fitness center, right? Katie clarified, trying to find out more about Maddie. Yes, that's right. My mom works as a school principal and my dad is on the city council, Maddie replied, telling not only about herself, but also about her parents. Hearing this made Steve's parents a little embarrassed and uncomfortable, as they have simpler and more modest jobs with little income. That's great, and I work as an accountant in a small private office. Billy is an energy engineer, but has been in a management position for several years, the mother replied, telling us about herself and her husband. Oh, that must be very interesting, the girl replied kindly, glancing at Steve's father. Well, I wouldn't say that, but maybe you're right, Billy replied, embarrassed. As they continued chatting, the parents noticed that Maddie was not only charming, but also pleasant in conversation, smart and intelligent girl, communication with whom brought a lot of pleasure. Noticing that it was already too late, Maddie apologized as she had to go home. Her parents did not delay the girl and made their son walk her home as it was getting late and it was not quite safe outside. When Steve returned home an hour later, he noticed that his parents were still sitting in the kitchen discussing something. Didn't you guys go to bed yet? It's late. Come over for a minute, the mother said, offering her son a cup of tea. What is it? Don't tell me you didn't like Maddie, Steve replied, worried about his parents' acquaintance with the girl. Are you mad? We expected all sorts of things and prepared for the worst, but Maddie is a dream come true. On the contrary, we wanted to tell you to hold on to this girl with both hands, and if you really like her, don't take too long to propose, Billy replied. I don't think I'm planning to get married. It's too soon, Steve replied. Too young? You're 28, you're about to turn 30, and you still don't have a wife or kids. Maddie is a wonderful girl, and I'm sure you'll have wonderful children, replied the mother, dreaming of grandchildren. All right, I'll think about it. Glad that you like her, replied the son, and realizing that it was too late, went to his room. After meeting Steve's parents, several more months pass. During this time, the couple continued their relationship, getting to know each other better and better. Each date was special and romantic because Steve was very attentive to his favorite girl, driving him crazy. Maddie appreciates the warm attitude to herself and treats the man with reciprocity, doing everything so that he does not regret that he chose her. New Year's Eve is approaching and Maddie, going to work, hears her parents actively discussing something in the kitchen. It turns out that the mother is not happy that her daughter will not introduce them to her young man and is ready to look for an automobile workshop personally to see the mysterious Steve in person. Realizing that they can't put it off, Maddie walks into the kitchen and reassures her mother, informing her that she's ready to introduce them any minute. Really? You're really ready for us to meet your boyfriend? I was beginning to think he was fictional and didn't exist, Mom replied with irony in her voice. No, he's real and you'll soon see it. You can say where and when you're ready to meet him and I'll talk to Steve. Invite him to our house for a holiday dinner, answered the father, realizing that New Year's Eve is a family holiday, during which it will be very useful to meet his daughter's fiancé. Okay, agreed, Maddie replied and left for work. Realizing that she still had a few minutes before the beginning of the working day, the girl decided to call Steve, warning him that her parents wanted to meet him and it was impossible to delay. Hello, my favorite. Aren't you busy? The girl asked, getting through to the man. Hi, sweetheart. No, I just arrived at the workshop. And how are you there? Something happened or just missed? Steve asked, not expecting from Maddie such an early call. Both. My parents are already panicking that you don't exist, or I'm just afraid to introduce you to them. I had to tell them that we're ready to meet at any time, and my dad invited you to New Year's Eve dinner. I hope you don't mind that. Of course, I don't mind. I think it's time I got to know them too. Or it would be awkward to do it during marriage, Steve replied. Marriage? Are you proposing to me already? The girl asked, embarrassed. Well, not yet. But you never know. Anything can happen, Steve replied, realizing that his joke was not quite appropriate. So I call my parents and say that you agree? Maddie tried to clarify. Yes, you can reassure them and tell them that I am absolutely real, and in a few days they will see me at their house. Okay, thank you. Maddie answered and hung up the phone and called her parents back to tell them that the New Year's Eve dinner would be held in Steve's company. Having got another car to work on, Steve can't concentrate on his task for a long time, as he realizes that in a few days, a very important and responsible step awaits him. It is not only uncomfortable, but also embarrassing to go to the house empty-handed, so Steve decides to spend the next 2 days trying to find some presents. He knows practically nothing about the girl's parents and realizes that he can't do without Maddie's help. Having hardly worked his shift, the man hurried to the fitness center and, after waiting for the end of the training process, called Maddie to him. Hi, what are you doing here? I thought we didn't have an appointment today, she said, not expecting to see Steve. Hi, yeah, I understand, but we need to talk. What's up? Did you change your mind? Maddie asked, scared. No, I haven't changed my mind. That's not what I meant. A New Year's Eve dinner without presents is unforgivable, and I don't know your parents at all. Will you help me pick out something for them that will be pleasant and memorable surprises? Steve asked, calming the girl down. Oh, that's what you mean. Of course I'll help, replied Maddie, realizing that it was no big deal. After having coffee at the fitness center, Maddie went home, and Steve called his friends to borrow some money, since his salary does not allow him to buy several good gifts at once. The next morning, the couple met up and went shopping in search of gifts for their parents. Having bought a beautiful scarf for Maddie's mother and a modest souvenir for her father, Steve realized that they could not do without something tasty for the holiday table. Afraid not to guess with the choice, the man decided to limit himself to a cake and a bottle of champagne. December 31 comes and Maddie, having run away from work right after lunch, goes to Steve's car repair shop to give him a ride home and from there go to her place for dinner. After taking all the presents, the couple goes to the girl's house and, ringing the doorbell, wait impatiently for someone to open the door. At some point it opened, and Steve saw a beautiful woman, by the appearance of which was not difficult to guess that this is Maddie's mom, because they are alike as 2 drops of water. Hello, my name is Steve, very glad to meet you, said the man, handing the woman a cake and a bottle of champagne. Hello, come in, said the girl's mother, letting the couple into the house. Hi, Mom, said Maddie, giving her mom a hug and a kiss on the cheek. My name is Selena, and I'm very happy to meet you too. Maddie has told us so much about you that we were beginning to doubt that the guy really existed. I hope now there is no doubt that I am real, asked Steve. No, I'm sure my daughter has excellent taste, Selena replied, complimenting her daughter's lover. Well, hello, Steve. My name is Mickey, said a man who came out of the bedroom and shook Steve's hand. Hello, nice to meet you. I hope I'm not interrupting the party. No, you're just in time. I have everything ready, answered his mother and ran into the kitchen to set the table. So you're a car mechanic, right? Mickey asked, left alone with his daughter's man. Yes, I work at a shop near John's, Steve replied. Antipobs. "I know him, he's a good guy," replied the man who had crossed paths with the service station owner many times and even asked him for help. "Yes, good, but sometimes too strict," replied Steve, remembering the first months of work in the workshop. "There is that, but I'm sure it was all business. Shall we have a drink while the ladies are having a celebratory dinner?" "Yes, we could," Steve replied with a twinkle in his eye. Mickey didn't like this reaction so much, but he didn't say anything because today was a holiday and the desire to drink was welcome. After sitting and chatting in the living room for a while, the men heard the women calling them to the table. Gathering in the kitchen, the family continued to communicate and get acquainted with the man of the daughter, learning more and more interesting things about him. With the chimes striking, they not only congratulated each other on the new year, but also gave memorable gifts. Selena and Mickey were pleasantly surprised by Steve's attention, but even more they were conquered by the fact that he guessed with the gifts, giving really useful and necessary things for them. Steve was also happy about it, realizing that he had earned a little plus for himself and would be able to leave a good impression of himself. Celebrating New Year's Eve, Steve and Maddie decided to take a little walk and go to the city center to watch the festive fireworks. The parents did not object, realizing that young people need to have fun and have fun. After going downtown, the couple discussed meeting Maddie's parents and concluded that everything went better than one might expect. Upon returning home, Maddie tried to talk to her parents and, according to her mother, was able to ascertain that she really liked Steve. Her father isn't happy with everything, but he's perpetually grouchy and not happy with much in life in general, so her mother advises her to ignore what he has to say. A couple of weeks later, Maddie is preparing to celebrate her 25th birthday and decides to book a table at a cafe, gathering work colleagues and acquaintances. Realizing that Steve might be uncomfortable around strangers, Maddie suggests that he invite Austin and Billy, especially since she has become friends with their other halves Maria and Anna. Steve is overjoyed by this news, and after waiting for his lunch break, he tells his friends about it, causing a storm of positive emotions. Realizing that the number of guests began to increase, Maddie called back to the cafe and ordered not just a table, but a small room where they could have fun without paying attention to other visitors. Meeting at the cafe, Austin, Maria, Billy and Anna congratulate the girl on her birthday by giving her presents. Soon Maddie's work colleagues arrive at the party, who also decided not to reinvent the wheel, presenting money for the girl to spend on what she needs most. The last to arrive at the party is Steve, explaining that he has a special surprise to present at the end of the evening. Having filled their glasses, everyone once again congratulates Maddie on her birthday and cheerfully celebrates this event, dancing and singing at karaoke. Gradually, the evening comes to an end, and realizing this, Steve decides to reveal his surprise. "Maddie, can I talk to you for a minute?" said the man, realizing that soon the guests will begin to disperse. "Yeah, sure. Remember, I told you that at the end of the evening, you will have a special surprise?" Steve asked, anticipating an interesting and original gift. "Yes, you said that at the beginning of the evening," Maddie confirmed. "We've known each other for a while, and I've realized that I'll never find a better girl than you. You're smart, beautiful, and just a wonderful person that I've never doubted for a minute, and I hope I never will. Today is your day, and I want to make it the brightest and most memorable. I hope this gift will make you happy," said Steve, and knelt down and pulled a ring box out of his pocket. "Oh my God, are you serious?" asked a shocked Maddie, realizing what was going on. "Yes, and you, when will you be ripe?" Maria asked, elbowing her man in the side. "As soon as," so immediately he answered, trying not to be specific. "Fill your glasses," she said. "Yes," said Billy, realizing that Austin had to be rescued and his girlfriend's attention diverted. Gradually, the birthday celebration turned into a proposal celebration that lasted about another hour. Realizing that it was too late, The couple left the cafe and Steve took his favorite girl home. The next morning, he waited for Maddie at the entrance with a bouquet of flowers, as in the evening they agreed that they would not delay the marriage in a long box and will go to the registry office to apply and decide on the date. Meeting Maddie, Steve and his girlfriend keep the promise they made to each other the night before. Back home, Steve tells his parents that he has proposed and this morning, he and Maddie have already applied to the registry office. Mother and father are truly happy because their son has chosen a wonderful girl and has finally become an adult, independent and able to take responsible male actions. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk," said Maddie, returning home, who also decided to tell her parents about everything. "Yes, daughter, is something wrong?" asked her mother, trying to understand what Maddie wanted to talk about. "Steve proposed to me yesterday, and we applied for the registry office this morning. I hope you're happy." "Yes, my daughter, I'm very happy for you," Selena replied tearfully and hugged her daughter. "Are you in no hurry? Maybe we should meet a little more," asked the father. "What are you starting?" "Stop it. They are happy and love each other," the woman objected to her husband, so that he did not spoil the mood of his daughter with stupid questions. "No, we are not in a hurry. We did it consciously and are ready to become husband and wife," coldly replied Maddie, not giving in to the provocation of her father. "Good girl, everything is right," Selena supported her daughter. Mickey wanted to say something else, but at some point he changed his mind and went out to the entrance to have a smoke to relax a little and not to continue the conversation. When he returned to the apartment a few minutes later, he also congratulated his daughter and wished her to be happy because she really deserved it. In the morning, Maddie left for work, and her father, deciding to keep her mother a little longer, asks her to give him a few minutes for one very important and delicate topic, which he did not talk about yesterday. "You do realize that Steve needs to know about what happened 15 years ago, don't you?" Mickey asked. "Why would he need to know about it? They love each other, what else is needed?" replied his wife, believing that it was not necessary to tell about the past. "I don't agree with you. It is very important and can affect their communication and relationship. Such a secret can lead to scandals, and that's at the very least. Have you considered that such a secret could be the beginning of the downfall of your daughter's family life? Or do you want him to leave her after a few years, discouraging all desire to marry a second time?" continued to insist on his head of the family. "Stop it. Nothing like that will happen. They are doing well, and it is not worth getting involved. I forbid you to talk about what happened then. Forget about that incident and live your life in peace," Selena replied, not wanting to rehash the past. "I can't do that. It's not fair," her husband objected. "Did anyone ask you?" "Silence, if you do not want it to affect our personal lives," rudely replied the wife, trying to protect her daughter and her fiancé from unnecessary information for them. Outraged by his wife's behavior, Mickey said everything he thought and, having scandalized his wife, left the house, slamming the door. After a walk in the fresh air, the man went to a cafe and decided to drink a whitewash to calm down a little and let the situation go, trying not to interfere in his daughter's personal life and not to spoil the upcoming wedding. A couple of days later, Mickey realizes that he as a man and head of the family should not only support his daughter, but also help financially, because her fiancé is not rich, and the wedding should be lavish and memorable. Getting ready for the wedding, Mickey rented an expensive restaurant, allocating money for a cake, a suit for the groom, and an exquisite dress for the bride. Having spent heavily, the man does not count the money, realizing that his daughter deserves to be the happiest. The hustle and bustle and preparations continue, and imperceptibly, the wedding day approaches. Realizing that the wedding is already in a few days, Mickey again gives in to panic because Steve knows nothing about what happened in the distant past. Returning home early, the man decides to have another talk with his wife, discussing an old family secret. He is convinced that it is impossible to hide such a thing, and Selena believes that with the truth her husband can not only destroy the relationship between Maddie and Steve, but also cause his daughter a severe psychological trauma, since she does not know anything. Forget it. I've told you several times not to bring it up again. I don't want our daughter to suffer and cry, said Selena, demanding that her husband continue to keep the secret. If the feelings are serious and Steve really loves our daughter, it will not interfere with their relationship. If it is not and he leaves her, then let it all happen on the eve of the wedding, and not during married life, when Maddie will spend all the best years on someone who does not deserve it, said Mickey, and not seeing in his wife's eyes understanding, left the house again. Realizing that this cannot go on indefinitely, the man leaves to meet Steve. Arriving at the service station, Mickey looks for Steve and, having met his boss, asks John to take him to his future son-in-law. "Hi, we need to talk and urgently," says the man, meeting Steve. "Hi, okay, I'll be done with the car repairs now and we can talk," the auto mechanic replied. "Your shift is over for today." John intervened in the conversation, realizing that Mickey is a serious and solid man who wouldn't come just for fun. "Good, then let's meet in 15 minutes at the cafe. I need to take a shower," replied Steve, realizing that he needed to clean himself up, having washed off the dirt and machine oil. "Great, I'll meet you at the cafe across the street," Mickey replied and left the machine shop for the cafe nearby. "We need to talk. My wife asked me not to say anything about it, but I realized that it's not right." The man started the conversation. "What do you mean?" Steve asked with incomprehension. "The thing is that 15 years ago, Maddie often went fishing with me. She liked winter fishing the best because I let her run around, played snowballs with her, and took her sledding. Another trip to nature did not bode well, but something happened that I could not have expected. At some point, the ice cracked and Maddie went underwater. I did everything I could to help her, but she was in the icy water for a long time, which affected her health." "What's wrong with her? Is she in some kind of trouble?" Steve asked fearfully. "Yes, she was very cold, and it was affecting her health. As you can imagine, I'm referring primarily to her health as a woman," Mickey admitted. "What do you mean?" Steve asked incredulously. "The fact is that Maddie can't have children. It's my fault, and I've felt guilty about it all my life. My wife asked me never to tell anyone about it, but I realized that you are Maddie's future husband, and you should know the truth. I sincerely hope that this will not affect your family life, because you love each other," continued Maddie's father, realizing that such information could cause shock. "Yes, I understand," Steve said, his thoughts scattering in different directions. For a few minutes, Mickey continued to say and explain things to Steve, but he couldn't hear anything as he was thinking about what he had just learned. After hearing the story to the end, Steve, without answering a word, jumped out of the cafe and took a cab to the fitness center. Once there, he called Maddie, demanding that she come outside right away as he had a serious conversation to have. "Hi, is something wrong?" "You seem nervous today," Maddie said, meeting Steve outside the fitness center. "Why didn't you say anything to me? Why am I finding out at the last minute?" The man started asking, trying to get a confession. "What are you talking about?" "I do not understand what's going on," confusedly replied the girl. "Don't pretend. I mean that you can't have children," Steve blurted out. "What? Who told you that?" Maddie asked, shocked. "Your father. He told me about your diagnosis, and he thinks it makes me want to marry you." "I'm sorry, but it's over between us," Steve declared, dumping his fiancé on the eve of the wedding. Having said everything, he did not wait for Maddie's answer and left, despite the fact that the girl began to cry, not holding back emotions and grief from what she had been through. Realizing that the workday was continuing and she had been let go for a few minutes, the girl returned to the fitness center and, constantly wiping away her tears, struggled to work the day through to the end. Finishing her last workout, Maddie headed home to talk to her parents and find out if Steve, who was no longer answering her phone calls, was telling the truth. "Hi. Is it true that I can't have children?" Maddie asked from the doorstep when she saw her mother. "Hi, daughter. Who told you that?" asked the mother, not expecting that the girl could know about it. "My father talked to Steve, and when he found out, he left me." "So is it true or not?" continued to ask Maddie, wanting to know the truth. "Yes, daughter, it is indeed true. I'm sorry, we didn't want to tell you about it because we were afraid it might affect your psyche. 15 years ago, while winter fishing, you fell through the ice and froze to death. It didn't affect your health, you didn't even catch a cold, but it left an irreparable mark on your female health." "I'm sorry," Selena replied, revealing what she had been hiding so carefully all this time. "I'm going to the capital." "I don't want to live here anymore," Maddie said, having discussed the family secret with her mother and decided that she didn't want to cross paths with Steve or his acquaintances. "I understand, but can't we wait for Dad first?" Mom asked. "Okay," Maddie replied, agreeing with her mother. In the evening, the family gathered and discussed what had happened. The father supported his daughter's decision and gave her money for the first time, so that Maddie could start a new life in the capital, and having rented an apartment, could quietly look for an apartment. Having coaxed with Maddie, Steve went to the nearest bar and, determined to forget about everything that happened to him, got drunk. He doesn't come home at night and doesn't show up for work in the morning. Several weeks pass, but no one can find the man because his cell phone is disconnected, and neither at home nor in the car repair shop do not know where he could have disappeared. Realizing that Steve has disappeared, the father once again comes to the workshop to talk to his son's boss and discuss their further plan of action. Thinking that something may have happened to him, John suggests calling the police and writing a report on Steve's disappearance. Hearing this, Austin realizes that the long drunkenness of his work colleague can turn into a real problem, not only for him, but also for those around him. Deciding to save the situation, Austin admits that he took pity on his friend and did not give him away to the chief, since Steve lives in his garage. Talking to Sergei Inokentьevich and John, Austin promises to talk to his friend and bring him home soon. Arriving at his garage, Austin tries once again to talk to his colleague and talk sense into him, as his parents have begun to sound the alarm and are ready to report him to the police if he does not return in the next few days. Deciding not to inconvenience his colleague and partner, Steve thanks Austin for his help and, having sobered up a bit, orders a cab home. Upon arrival, the man tried to quietly and stealthily make his way to his room, but he was unsuccessful as he knocked over everything in his path. "Where have you been?" the mother asked, seeing her son staggering and struggling to stand on his feet. "He had been drinking and living in a friend's garage," Steve answered in a calm tone. "Can you explain what happened? We were getting ready for the wedding, and you disappeared. Where's Maddie?" "We can't reach her," Mom continued, trying to figure out what's going on. "Forget about Maddie, she's gone. We broke up with her. I'll do better than her." "What do you mean forget? What happened? Did she dump you?" "No, I dumped her. She can't have kids. Why would I want her like that?" Steve said, and not wanting to continue the conversation, went to his room to sleep and recover. Being under the constant control and supervision of his parents, Steve was able to pull himself together to get back to work and get on with his life. As time passes, things get worse as Steve continues to abuse alcohol, ignoring his boss and parents. This leads to constant scandals, but everyone is only disappointed in Paul, realizing that no words he hears and does not understand. Addicted to the bottle, the man could not drown out the pain and decided that it would be best to try to find a replacement for Maddie, finding an equally pretty girl. In his spare time, Steve has a promiscuous relationship and changes girls like a glove, but none of them can compare with Maddie, so the man drinks even more. Realizing that it is impossible to get results from Steve, John stops trusting the employee and removes him from serious work, making the man an assistant to Austin and Billy again. Having cut Steve's salary in half, John continues to keep him in the car service solely out of respect for his old comrade. The parents don't let up. After waiting for their son to come home from work, they invite him into the kitchen for another talk. "Son, how long will it last? It's been more than a year, and you still do not want to take the mind," tried to get through to Steve's worried mother. "Why are you bothering me? I know how to behave," Steve replied defiantly. "Why are you doing this to your mother? She's worried and wants what's best for you," Billy tried to calm his son down. "Give me a break. I know what's best for me. I don't want to hear or discuss anything," the son replied and left the house, again asking Austin to shelter him in the garage so that no one would interfere with his immoral lifestyle. A few weeks later, Steve returned home again, as he did not have enough money to drink, and his friends did not lend him any more, realizing that no one will return the debt. So several more years pass, during which Steve has not been able to find a girl, at least in something resembling or surpassing Maddie. John got tired of the drunkard and fired him, apologizing to his friend for being tired of his son. Steve wasn't going to look for a job for a while, but his parents insisted that he go for an interview and at least get a job as a security guard at some store. After receiving another rejection, Steve returned home and took a bottle of white water and turned on the news. A few minutes later, he saw a news report with a famous car racer. Oliver talked about his return to the big sport and admitted that one person had helped him in this. It was to this woman, who became his wife, that he decided to dedicate his first victory at the World Championship, which started in the capital. When Oliver introduced his wife, Steve was numb with surprise when he saw Maddie, holding the hands of two babies on the screen, and bit his lip in self-pity. Turning off the TV, he drifted off to sleep, but he couldn't sleep, having spent the most painful night of his life. Barely waiting until morning, Steve mustered up the courage to call Maddie. "Hello, did you want something?" the woman asked, answering the phone. "Hi, yes, I'd like to meet," Steve said, not expecting her to answer at all. "Okay, I don't mind. I'll be in the capital for 2 more days, if you want to come and talk," answered Maddie, and distracted by the children, hung up. Thinking that he should apologize for what he did a few years ago, Steve borrowed money from his father and, finding more or less decent clothes, went to the station. Arriving in the capital early in the morning, he called Maddie again to arrange a meeting. A couple hours later, Steve arrived at the agreed place and saw Maddie sitting at the far table. "Hi, good to see you," Steve said. "Hi, let's get to the point. What did you want to talk about?" replied Maddie, who clearly didn't have the time or desire for a long chat. "I wanted to apologize for something I did years ago. Since then, I haven't met any girl who can compare to you, and I realized that I did a huge stupid thing that I still regret. Don't beat yourself up, it's okay. Moreover, your act gave me a new life, and I'm grateful to you for that. At that moment I was broken, because you left me on the eve of the wedding, and it seemed that life gave a crack. I decided to change my surroundings and start my life with a clean slate, so I moved to the capital and never regretted it. It was hard at first, but I managed to get into a sports rehabilitation center, where I realized myself as a specialist who is appreciated and respected. A few years ago, I met Oliver, who had survived a terrible accident that left his wife dead and him disabled. Taking him seriously, I did everything I could to get Oliver back on his feet, and in just a year I achieved a positive result. Having attached to me, he confessed his sympathy, and I, having avoided any attention from men for a long time, reciprocated it. It turned out that from his first marriage, he had 2 wonderful kids, whom I loved as my own, and admitted that I could not have children. Oliver was not embarrassed by this, and I became the mother of his sons, wonderful boys who made me happy. But you know what the most important thing is? Maddie asked, looking straight into the man's eyes. And what is it? Steve asked in a sad voice, realizing that Maddie met him only out of pity. There was a hormonal disruption in my body, which can be called a miracle. I'm pregnant, and we're about to have another wonderful baby boy. As you can see, a diagnosis is not a judgment, and God alone knows what is in store for each of us.